everybody to the IBJ Black Robe Podcast. As always, we have another special guest with us today, Duaa-Rahemaah Hunter, and we're very excited to get into what we got for y'all today. But before we start anything, we're going to get into the IBJ mission first. The purpose of the Institute of Black Justice is to relentlessly pursue equity and justice for all. The IBJ mission is threefold: to be an advocate for fairness and equity, to be an accelerator of the justice system's transformation, and to be an accomplice to credible social justice influencers and the communities they serve. The topic tonight is going to be about learning more about the Resident Action Project, being told by our Duaa-Rahemaah. The overview that we'll give you to, set some things in place is the Resident Action Project is a program, Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, a statewide organizing network led by people who live in low income / affordable housing and those with lived experience of housing injustice, instability, and or homelessness. We have the pleasure of hearing from Duaa-Rahemaah Hunter, the Housing Alliance organizer from the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance. And we would just love for you to introduce yourself, tell us about yourself. You look amazing today, and we're so happy to have you. And also, I should mention Carol Mitchell, our founder, our CEO. The person who keeps it running, keeps gas in my car, as she says. I want to mention her as well. But yeah, Duaa-Rahemaah, could you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hey y'all, and thank you for having me. Like I tell everybody, I'm not the most articulate. I like talking, but I do not like speaking. So y'all be patient with me. But it's really good to be in space with y'all, and I am honored that I'm a guest on y'all's show. So, as you said, my name is Duaa-Rahemaah Hunter. I am the statewide organizer for Resident Action Project, which is a program of the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance. Don't let that name fool you. Like I tell everybody, we do not do housing, we do not do direct services, we do not do landlord mitigation. Um, we don't own housing, we don't do rental assistance. We, refer folks to with expertise in them areas. But what we do is change policy that everybody across the state can have some equitable housing. Because we do know that, the most people impacted are people that look at like us, the Black, the Indigenous, and other people of color, those who identify as LGBTQ, those coming out of formerly incarcerated, our veterans, single parents, immigrants and refugees, and the list goes on and on. But we say no more. We're trying to dismantle the system because housing justice is racial justice and so forth. And we just want to make changes so that we're not doing this 7 generation down the line.
Just now, I gotta say, I appreciate you giving us that breakdown. And I think my first question kind of goes into what you just mentioned. So it's not just about low income individuals or houseless individuals. It's about there's intersectionality to it. Like there's multiple identities at play when you're dealing with people. So my question to you is, our question is, share some of the key housing issues facing low income individuals and families in Washington State. And even with that, the intersections that happen with those people, whether they be able-bodied, whether they be for the LGBTQIA plus community, things like that.
So some of the most pressing things right now is um, there's some federal policies that are going on also as well on the state level. And so last legislative session that just passed, we had a rent stabilization bill, House Bill 2114, that would help stabilize a tenant while they were inside without the landlord raising and capping like rental increase, like up to 7%. We had it at 5%, but they made an amendment to 7%. But what that bill would have done was cap it at 7% a year instead of all these people are getting priced out of housing because of the rent increase. People are getting like $500 rent increases, double the amount of rent increases. People on fixed income, which are more of our seasoned adults, are getting their rent is increasing more than their fixed income. And so what that bill would have done was stabilize somebody while they were renting until they moved. But it would have, we also asked for them to give them enough time, like 6 months. So if they could not afford it, then they would be able to move and break their lease without penalty. But the bill got far, and we're excited because it got far. And we did a housing and homeless advocacy day back in January, and like 700 advocates and tenants and housing justice warriors signed up, and about 500 folks showed up in Olympia that day to talk to elected officials about this. So we were on the steps, we did an action, and everybody scheduled folks to go talk to their folks. But it didn't pass this year, but we're working on in the interim of getting people ready to fight this again because we need it, because if not, we're going to have a new face of homelessness. And what we also do around policy work on the state level is making sure there's money in the housing trust fund, which helps build affordable housing. It helps keeps programs in place that work with folks like rental assistance, shelter programs, and also making sure that our frontline workers are getting a livable wage. Because sometimes our frontline workers are a client somewhere else while they're helping a client. So that's some of the things we've been working on. I think we were also working on a REAP, which is a document recording fee, which also goes into money for local programs inside of everybody's county across the state. And so like I said, so RAP is a C3, which is a nonprofit, which that Washington Low Income Housing is. And then we have a sister organization called the Action Fund, which is a C4, so we can do endorsements to different housing warriors who are running again or running for the first time from the local level to the state level and beyond. And so the work that we do, like, so RAP, my organization does state level, but RAP, since we kind of live in different communities, we also work on things in our local community because that's important, as well as some federal things because we had a national partner, and we work with a national coalition around housing. And right now it's the criminalization of homelessness, which they're fighting on a federal level. That will be folks will be doing all kind of actions around that next week, because that's when they're going to be hearing, United States versus the Grant Pass Oregon and the things they're doing down there around homelessness. And it's not fair. How are you going to criminalize homelessness when there's nowhere else for them to go?
Yeah, Isaiah, do you see my little brown hand?
You know what's so crazy? I was just gonna literally ask you for your thoughts right now. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Uh, my little brown hand is up in the corner, Duaa-Rahemaah, because I, I don't know if you know, but Isaiah and Morgan and Kalia, the young people associated with this podcast and the IBJ's ACES program, were actively engaged in our own local initiative one, the tenant, uh, you might say tenant rights bill that passed in Tacoma.
Right.
And so I just want to make sure we are 100% engaged in this issue actively,
Right.
and because housing is fundamental, safe and clean housing is fundamental. And you and I know that poverty, I bought a book recently about the criminalization of poverty.
Yeah.
And you and I know how children get removed under the heading of neglect when really it's poverty, y'all. That's what you're observing.
We don't have we do not live by a grocery store. We're not on a bus line. You want to put the liquor store, the rental place, the cash checking, checking places in the neighborhood, but not give us neighborhoods and build where folks can thrive. You know what I mean? Parks for the kids to play. There's a library, things that make folks thrive instead of just surviving. A lot of folks who were out here just surviving.
Yeah, and I think that's part of our work on the family advocacy side, is to move families from surviving to thriving. And housing is fundamental to that. Stable housing that's clean and affordable. Um, the reason I raised my brown hand is because I want to know, just based on your work at the legislature, what is it that landlords are arguing as the reason they don't want a cap on rent increases? That's
Ooh,
one.
there,
What's their story? And two, did you see a lot of out of state private equity money flowing in, influencing the legislators who voted against the bill? Just curious about that, because that's what happened in Tacoma.
Right. And that's usually what happens, period, anyway. It was going good. I mean, it got farther than it when we introduced it last year. Um, so it passed the House. It kind of passed the Senate and went to the Ways and Means. And but then it died. It not died because we don't say that. It just hibernated. It's hibernating right now, so we can bring it back, right? We can't bring something back that died, right? So it's hibernating. But to answer your question, they were saying that they needed it to fix which we've been getting stories, things are not being fixed. That we're trying to control rent. Rent control is different than rent stabilization. So we make sure that we're not saying rent control. We're not trying to control anything. We're just trying to stabilize where somebody's going, and they always come about this mom and pop, and this is, what are we gonna do? Or we're gonna take, if this passes, we're just gonna take the house away and not sell it. We're not gonna sell it and, move our business somewhere else. So it was a whole bunch of different things, but there was also really good testimony on folks who were impacted by the rent increases about how, they're looking at profit over people. And they need to really just stop. We're not trying to control the rent. We're just trying to make sure people, you know, are stabilized in their housing while they're there. And then once they move, they can do what they want, make the changes, and then put the price at where they want to. But I know during the session, the Vancouver Housing Authority had wrote an article in the Columbia that the wait list for Section 8 was gonna close because the rents have gotten too high for what the voucher amounts were.
And what about federal law raising the voucher amounts? I had heard that, I mean, is this part of your federal national work? Because I had heard that the Section 8 voucher amounts are way too low and haven't changed in, like, I don't know, 20
They
years. Is
haven't
that
changed
true?
just like TANF hasn't changed the amount they give somebody to live, right? That's kind of something else we're working on besides the criminalization of homelessness. It's also on the federal level, it's the right for tenants to organize. And that's kind of what the Congress is doing on their own, because I was up there last month, and we went up and had Capitol Hill Day. And so they were talking about that, those on fixed income and the barriers also with those coming out of the institutions and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a lot, but I heard that our Secretary Fudge was retiring. So,
He
and we were
did.
working with her. We had last year, working with the National Coalition. We had held some town halls. We talked with her chief of staff. Um, and then they did a tour around the conditions of some of their buildings. So they were in Lafayette, Louisiana,
Oh,
Ohio, Cottage Grove, Oregon, and then we went up to DC to talk to them about all, everything. And while we were there, which was crazy, because on our way to go see Secretary Fudge and do our little town hall, we stopped at a park to do an action. And while we were there, we seen this homeless man, kind of have an episode, and watched how the police kind of like ran and like tackled him, and there was like about 4 or 5 of them. And I guess somebody had called and felt like scared or whatever, but he wasn't bothering nobody. And so it was kind of ironic for us to be going in there to talk about the criminalization of homelessness while we just taped something on the way there. So
things that make you go, hmm.
yeah.
I'm going to hand it back to Isaiah. Thank you, Isaiah, for letting me get
No,
my little questions in there. I appreciate it. They're much more organized, Duaa-Rahemaah, They have they have it all planned and laid out. And they know my random self when I when I when I show up, So Isaiah, I know you've got some more questions. Go ahead.
Oh no, you are all good. You add so much to the conversation. You my co-host today, so I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I mean, there's so much you hit on, like the destabilization of communities, and the things we're seeing are symptoms of destabilization, which is one thing I feel like we talked about within our last ACEs relaunch event. We had a conversation about criminalizing things, and specifically, like we were talking about homelessness was one thing we've mentioned, and I just appreciate how many ways you're breaking down that this is not people. No one chooses to be houseless or homeless. You know what I'm saying? It comes from something. So the real issue isn't just finding a home, but the cause of the houselessness. So I appreciate that so much. And I guess the next question I have for you is like, how have you seen the impact so far, especially like when we're considering the new bill that was just passed with the cap at 7%? Where
It
do you,
didn't pass.
oh, it didn't pass, my bad.
It didn't pass.
But like when it comes to future initiatives that you're pushing for, how do you see them like playing out in a positive way in the community if we are to get the things we're working for?
Well, people can thrive and don't have to worry about it. That's not something, because with the cost of the increases in rent that folks are given physically and mentally, they have been dealing with, worrying and stress, and stress is the number one silent killer, right? And so now they're dealing with health issues, because they don't know where they're going to go. And some people just leave. They leave where they're going because they don't have nowhere else to go. So now you see people, a new face of homelessness out there, people on fixed income. So if they can't afford where they at and you're going to look for something else, it's going to be more, and they're going to ask for first, last, and you got to pay these fees. So if we can get rent stabilization, people can be stable. And with stability, it's like, let me go back. When I went to school, when I decided to finally, be an adult, it's like, when I was in school, and so I would do all my work study off campus, so I can really get a feel for what I wanted to work, what field I wanted, population I want to work with in human services. So I worked with kids, I worked with veterans, I worked with folks with disabilities. But the main thing when I started working in housing was when I found out that without stable housing, there's not much you can really do if you don't have a safe place. If you have to be safe and it has to be affordable, and it's something like that, then it's really kind of hard to really do other things and thrive, because you're worrying about how you're going to do this or that. I remember like when I was dealing with that, and it's like if I had a high light bill, I'm more like, then if I have to pay this light, either the lights are going to be out or I'm going to be late on my rent, or one or the other. And I was kind of spiral because I can see the lights are going to go up. My electricity is going to get cut off. My food is going to get spoiled. Me and my kids is going to be homeless, and I ain't going to have nowhere to go. And so that's the same thing that's happening today. People are like not wondering if they got kids, what's going to happen, and so with that stress, and then the mental part of it, the anguish of like how we going to make it. And then you don't have, folks to call on, there's no funding, or you have to jump through all these barriers to get some. And with our cultures and other cultures that are non-white cultures, we don't really let our folks be out there on the street, so they don't qualify for something because they're not considered homeless, you know. So if I can change anything in this housing movement, it would be the definition of how do you define homelessness. So it's just a lot. It's a lot that you have to think about. And so here I am, I'm kind of stable, but now I'm worrying about my adult kids who are adulting with, and they got, half custody of their kids, if they're going to make it, because it'd be like either they going to be homeless or I'm going to be broke. And so if I have to help them, I'm putting myself at jeopardy. If something happened, then I don't have it. And this is what I'm telling them on the national level. I need bills to pass You know, they have some really good bills coming. They help young folks with young kids and stuff like that, bringing out more vouchers, Miss Carol and everything else. But if we don't get that, then I'm still gonna have to worry that, like, if my child is gonna be able to make it, or if they wanna come home, I don't want them to come back home, even though my door is open. I want them to be adults. It's like, no. But if I have to, I'm not gonna let them be out on the streets, that's for sure. But I want them to, like, be okay, you know, not to work 3 and 4 jobs just to make it, because then they can't live because they're always working.
Exactly. You know, Carol posted a great example of what you're saying in the chat. Would you be able to speak on that a little bit, Miss Carol?
Yeah, I was just Monday, I guess. I guess that was yesterday. I'm losing track. I, in conversation with a client who is at a loss for where she's going to go because she has been completely priced out of her little 1 bedroom apartment. $1,680 is what her rent is going to go up to. A 1 bedroom in Tacoma. And it ain't fancy. It's just a little box, you know, with a tiny kitchen, a tiny bedroom, and a tiny bathroom, and a tiny closet. And these people are charging $1,680. And that is more for a 1 bedroom apartment than her mother pays for a 4 bedroom house in Spanaway on her mortgage. Now, how are you going to be charging $1,680 for a 1 bedroom when your mama owns a house where she paying less than that in Spanaway and owns it? And I mean, I'm trying to understand the thought process of landlords and private equity folks who are coming in, buying up all these old apartment complexes, slapping a bucket of paint on there, turning a wrench and saying, you know, they need to raise the rent 4% to pay for it. There, this is luckily this person has family that kicks in some money to pay for the copay, because as you can see, Section 8 is not keeping up. And if you are on a fixed income, all you got is Social Security because you're disabled. What it means is that people are going to be unhoused. And in Tacoma, Duaa-Rahemaah, they take a very big broom and just sweep them like trash. And you know where they sweep them to? They sweep them into the jail, or they sweep them into the morgue. That's where we're at. People are dying in those streets from exposure. This is not the kind of weather where you can be outside 9 months. You know, this is not Miami where you can literally live outside for 10, 11 months out of the year. This is Washington State. So is there any concern whatsoever for people who are disabled and on fixed incomes, can't keep up with these increases? Even 4% is a huge increase for somebody that only gets $800 a month to live on.
This is why we are doing this rent stabilization bill, and this is why we're still working on it during this time. It's like, I know one of our city council members here has wrote an ordinance around rent increases and things like that. So, and we also kind of know, like, if something passes in a more conservative city, that it can pass across the state. So if we can get this passed, it might really look good for us when we go back there. But when folks are talking about, and let me go back. So I'm gonna put something out in the air. We really need to get people to start voting. So we need to get people registered, we need to get people educated, and we need to get people to vote. Because I was one of them people who thought my vote didn't count. You know, and I always thought the only election that was important was that election every 4 years around the presidential race. And that's a lie. That's what they told us. That's what they wanted us to know, and that's kind of what we knew. And that's a lie. It's like our local races who we put in office as the superintendent, the judicial, our city council, our county councils, our state representatives are the ones who make the laws. The mayor, the governor, and the president only sign them. We need to make relationships, and we need to vote for folks that believe in the same things that we want to, because when we don't, we're in a mess like we're in right now. It becomes money over profit. Profit over people, because we not voting because we don't think our vote counts. So, and we need to educate folks, and we need to think, and it is really too, when Black people vote, things change. And there's a shirt I got from the NAACP a couple of years ago down in Vancouver, and I wear it all the time when it's voting season, and let them know when we vote, we change things. And they know that. That's why they come to our communities, but we need to not have them come to our community, because we also got to remember they work for us. We're not working for them. They work for us. They're supposed to do what we want. And if you talk to them, there are so many of them that are who want the same things we want. We have folks in there now who have lived experience, who are renters, who have been formerly incarcerated and everything else. But we just need to have conversations with them, because we can change some things. We need to have more of us running for things. More people who know what it's like to be boots on the ground and see what's going out here and really want to make a change. But
Beautifully said. Back to you, Isaiah.
and what I tell people, you don't complain, and you don't vote, don't complain, because we can make a difference. So I've been telling folks, which a lot of people don't know, back in 2022, the law went in effect that those who are coming out of the prison system are eligible to vote at the time as they get out their doors. And a lot of folks don't know that. And that's one of their best kept secrets. But it's like,
Yeah.
it's time for us to really hit them streets and really get people, because we got some state, there's some local and some state and some national elections this year, but really we need to really change some stuff.
Well said. Go ahead, Isaiah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. If we want our representatives to be representative, we have to vote. I always think about that too, even growing up. I'm like, how do we have, they're called a representative, but they're not representative of me in the literal mass majority of the population here. And so I love the point that you're pointing out about voting, why it's so important.
So
And
let me just say this, like, maybe then if one of somebody in our community, it just is, if they really actually do innocent until found guilty instead of guilty until found guilty, that they can have a peer. Their
Right.
peers can be sitting there because their peers are not there, because we know the system is corrupt, and it's made this the way it's intended it to be made, to keep us oppressed, or they can try to keep us oppressed, but we have to say no more, and we just burn everything down and start over. That's my philosophy. Burn the Constitution and all that and start over.
To that point, because like we said, people are dying, so big change needs to happen. If there's big problems, we need big change, and we can't keep doing it the small way. So I appreciate you so much for everything you've been sharing with us. To wrap this up, before we wrap up, we want to ask you, is there any upcoming events, campaigns, volunteer opportunities? How can the community get in jail?
Oh, yeah, y'all want to join rap? It's like, I'm gonna put this in the chat, then you guys have to get it out. But I'm always looking for volunteers across the state. I'm a statewide organizer, and we do all kind of trainings to help folks, share their stories, tell their stories, register people to vote, advocate. And I always tell people, I train you not to, it's to also help me build, membership and base, but also for you to be able to advocate for yourself and your family and your people and your friends and your neighbors, so you can learn how to use your voice to help make change. Because even going to the doctor, you need to use your voice. you know, and if you have kids, you really need to use your voice in the education system. So, if you know folks who have been, so let me get this here. So this is how, I think this is one of these ones are it. One of these. So I'm gonna send all three. So this is all three. There's one for the Alliance. That way, if people want to take action, which our actions are really they're really easy because it's already written, and so all you're doing is just sending it. Um, and then there's if you want to, become like a legislative lead, there's 49 districts in Washington, and each has a lead. Um, who kind of gathers the people in their community to go talk to their legislator off season, as the constituent and Jordan had, or helping build like that. And then there's my program, Resident Action Project, to work with us on the local, the state, and the national level. um, right now we're working on this art program. We got an art grant from Race Forward, and so we put a call out for people to mix art with organizing and advocacy. So we decided we wanted to have somebody commission us a song and do a spoken word. And so we put a submission out for that. And so tomorrow we'll start we got like 26 submission in like 2 weeks, but we narrowed it down to like 3 folks that we're going to interview tomorrow for the song. And then there's 2 people that we'll look at for the spoken word part. So that's ways you can get involved. So if you go into the Alliance, there's like a thing that you can take action, become a member, or we can partner and do some things, because I'm all about partnerships and outreach, and I do travel across the state a lot for different things. We so I do 5 regional calls. One in Southwest Washington is kind of like Clark County and things like that down there close by Oregon. Pierce County, King County, Eastern Central Washington over here is in person and online, and then up north on the I-5, Snohomish, Whatcom, and Skagit County. And then we have a statewide call every quarter. My whole thing is really getting people registered to vote, not just register because that's the easy part, but educating them and getting them to vote. So a ballot party is always really good, backyard barbecues, spades, dominoes, education, bingo. It's kind of how one of the organization they do bingo legislative and said tell the legislative. So I've been going around. So, we share a lot of different information and doing it like that because it's engaging, no one.
Barbecue and the ballot. That's a great combination.
Mhm.
Maybe we need to think about that for Black to Vote.
Okay, and I'll come. Let me know because we'll come help. We'll come help.
I like it. Barbecue chicken and ballots. I'm for it. I think
Right?
we can, you know what I'm saying, play basketball a little bit.
Barbecue beef
Thank you.
ribs,
Hey, come on.
beans and macaroni and cheese,
Oh wow, I know who's cooking now.
watermelon.
Some collard greens.
Right?
That's
My
right.
garden will be done by then. Like, look.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Dua
you for
Rahim.
having me.
This is amazing. If anybody wants to come support, volunteer, art and activism, barbecues, bingo, anything y'all trying to do, you know what I'm saying? You can go to www.wliha.org and all the opportunities should be there. And anything else mentioned in the podcast, we want to thank the listeners so much for coming. Thank you to Miss Carol, as always, for being my co-host, special guest, everything. Thank you to Morgan from behind the scenes setting everything up. And thank you again to our special guest, Dua, for coming here and sharing just your light and your joy here. We appreciate it. Um, stay
I
real,
think
stay blessed.
what's my name?
Stay safe. Dua Rahima.
Okay.
There you go. Come on.
Thank